Welcome into Courtside Seats with Kroeger,
a Charlotte Hornets podcast.
Here he is, Chris Kroeger.
All right, here we are, episode 23 of Courtside Seats, which is kind of hard to believe because we're approaching we're a quarter of the way to the century mark already. We're churning through these things every week, and I don't know, maybe I'm in trouble for waiting so long to get this guy on. Our COO is here. My boss is here, Pete Guelli. Pete, how are you?
I'm great, and I don't know if you did this on purpose, but I'm honored to be on episode 23.
Oh, it's your Jordan year. It's our Jordan anniversary. Mm-hmm. It's our Jordan episode of Courtside Seats.
Yeah, that's a special number around here.
It was intentional, actually. That's what. now that I think about it was entirely intentional that we brought you in for episode 23. It's good to see you, man, and it is. It's kind of hard to believe that we're almost towards the holiday season, and we're basically a month into the year already, and I have already thrown this out there. We're an eighth of the way through the season.
Yeah.
Like where does the time go already?
I don't know. It has gone by fast in the off season. You never think the season's going to get here, and then it starts, and it's just a locomotive, a runaway train. But I think everyone is. We're really pleased with where we're at, 11 games in, considering all the changes that we had in the off season.
It's fun. I mean, I think everything that JB said and Mitch said too. So I don't want to isolate any one guy, right? So our basketball operation has been completely retooled, and I think it's one thing to say something, it's another thing to do it. And a lot of guys say something, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody can win a press conference, or a lot of guys can win a press conference. A lot of guys could say, we're going to play this way. Okay, it's great to have a vision, but then the next part, this is leadership, right, is where you get people to buy in, and you get people to follow you, and you get people to follow you when things aren't always materialized yet, right? And I think we're starting to see that with Mitch. I think Mitch did a great job picking a head coach.
Yeah.
I know it's early. I'm willing to say that. And I think JB did a great job building out a staff underneath him. And I think that staff did a great job instilling a vision into this locker room, saying, guys, what's done is done. It's a new day. It's a new team. We're going to play a different way. And then you got to give credit to the players for following, right? So, top to bottom so far, I know as we tape this today, we're 6-5, getting ready for a road trip to begin. But 11 games in, that's beyond, I think, anybody's wildest estimation. And you could say we left some wins on the table, too.
Yeah, you never know how things are going to turn out. History is always the ultimate judge. But I agree. I think Mitch did a great job. There's no JB without Mitch. Mm-hmm. I think he did a great job getting the coach because it's all about process, right, and culture. And that's what he's building here. He's doing all the right things to put us in the absolute best position to be successful. Now, in this industry, doesn't matter if it's the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball, there's a lot of things you don't control, and it's difficult to predict where you're going to end up in the end. So that's why we were so laser focused on the process, getting the right guy in place and giving him the opportunity to build his culture and do things the right way so we have the best opportunity to be successful. And the early results are great. It's hard to say. It's a long season, hopefully a long career for JB here, but I love the way it started.
What's a word you would use to describe JB? Like if you remember when he was brought to you guys as an executive staff and you said, hey, we think this is going to be our guy. What do you remember early on about him?
Authentic. Yeah. I mean, right from day one, you knew exactly who he was. You knew where he came from. You knew what he was about. You knew he was a great communicator. You knew he was real. And you just felt like he's the kind of person not only the players would connect with, the organization would connect with, but the fans would connect with. And, you have so much access to people now. You could spot people who aren't authentic a mile away. Mm-hmm. And JB is the real deal. And I think that's one of the reasons why he was able to get guys bought in. And that's why we talked about it all summer. The gym was busier than it's ever been, and guys were here, and I think that's why. I think they liked being around him. I think they liked what he was building, and everybody wanted to be a part of it.
The word that came to mind for me is earnest, which I think kind of falls in line with what you're talking
definitely.
About. And he's always intentional, right? Like there's just never a wasted, anything, action that he performs, whether it's, in practice or it's shoot around or just a day-to-day communication. Everything he does is very intentional. It doesn't feel like there's any wasted motion or moment in what he does, which I think goes a long way too. And I think the way he communicates with these guys is it's different, as it should be. It's just a different type of coach. But I think everybody thought maybe immediately, all right, he would come from San Antonio mostly, right? That's the origination of your coaching tree. And are you going to be Pop? Are you going to be this dictator? Are you going to be this authoritarian figure? And he's his own guy.
Yeah.
He's learned stuff from Pop, and he's drawn from Pop, and he talks very openly about that. But he's his own man. He's not a Greg Popovich robot out here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah, it's just been refreshing. We had a couple of tough seasons, and you can't hide from that. And we made some big changes on the basketball side. And so far, it's been fun to be around. And you could see it building. You could see it coming over the summer as you saw the work that was put in, and then you got into summer league and you got into the preseason. The results so far are not a big surprise to me. I felt very confident that JB was going to do with this team exactly what he said he was going to do. I am a little surprised how quickly it's come together. And I'm not talking about necessarily wins and losses. I'm talking more about playing style. These guys have really understood his concepts from day one, and they've accepted their roles. And you're seeing it manifest itself on the court, I think, because of that buy-in, maybe a little bit earlier than we expected. But again, it's a long season, but it's just a fun brand of basketball to watch, and it's building towards something.
But I think the more I've seen it up close the last couple of months, I think the reason why, and this is why we shift focus again back to the locker room, right? You got to give these guys credit because they're pros. They don't have to, they could keep him at an arm's length for a little while and say, I don't know about you, right? Maybe we need to let's give this some time, and then maybe I'll fully jump into what you're giving us. They haven't done that. They've been all in, and I think one of those reasons is Kemba, because when you're captain, you're a two-time All-Star, your best player immediately falls in line. I think other guys take notice, right?
Yep.
And I think the other guy, and I mean, again, as you said, it's early. He's got to be one of the 5 best signings, if not higher than that, in the summer. Tony Parker, right? For Tony to come in as almost a foot soldier and say, guys, this guy's no slappy. He knows what he's talking about. I've seen it. Trust him. This works. When those two guys, when your best player and your most veteran player who's won 4 NBA championships and been to 6 All-Star appearances, those two guys, I think, set the tone.
Yeah.
Of course you're going to fall in line, right? You have to if those guys are the ones doing it.
It's incredibly unique, and I don't think you could really have the legitimate perspective on it until you saw him play and you saw him practice what Tony brings to the table for this team, because you've got a guy like JB was incredibly vested in what was going on in San Antonio and spent 10 years there, right, learning that system, and then he brings that system here. And then we go out and get a guy who was in that system longer than the coach was.
How crazy is that?
How many opportunities do you have for that to even happen?
Yep.
And then to have him come in and perform at the level that he's performing at, it really it's a perfect storm from that standpoint. And that's why I go back to the process and building something special. It puts us in a position to kind of step by step build something, but Tony coming has certainly expedited things.
Have you gotten used to seeing him in teal and purple yet? Because JB's like, hey, we got him on loan. He recognizes that he's a Spur, he's a Hornet on loan. So has it settled in where it's normalized now?
I'm completely comfortable with him as a Hornet. It didn't take long. Yeah, when you get a guy of Tony's caliber to come in, and he's part of your organization, I was pretty comfortable pretty quickly. You do have a completely different appreciation watching someone like that go about their business every day. I'm not talking about just on the court, but just every single day, how he approaches everything he does. You can say what you want. We all know he's a great player, Hall of Fame player, but we're not in front of it every day. Mm-hmm. Now that you have a just completely different level of appreciation for him, and clearly the fans do as well. So again, it's been another nice piece of the equation. I mean, we're celebrating, it's a great segue, a 30th anniversary season like this, which is a special year to begin with, and then you do some things like bring Tony in and have some success, and you see some of the successes the young guys are having. It's all really coming together for us.
I'll tell a quick story here, okay? So I've seen this, more times than I could even count through the first 11 games of the season, whether it's at practice or in other situations where, coach is working with one group of guys, and maybe they're installing a set, right, or they're going over a call, and then you have like the reserve unit maybe who's on the other end of the court, and they'll go back and forth. They'll take turns. You've seen this, and he'll work hands-on with one group, and then he'll take a minute or two and work hands-on with the other group. And when he's working hands-on with the other group, Tony is running through the play and talking about the nuance of the play. And, hey, Miles, you know what? If you come over here and set this pin down and then cut, but you got to sell it, right? And do it. He works on the nuance. And Malik, you got to curl, but if you curl this way, around that pin down, and then you run to this spot on the floor, I'll be able to hit you, but you got to wait until this moment. And you'll see JB sometimes, he'll wrap up with the other guys and he'll come over, and Tony's still coaching them essentially, right? And I think in certain situations a coach would immediately jump in with a player and say, even if he's right, start working with that group on top of it. But JB completely steps away and says, you got it, right? You're an 18th year player in the NBA. You know this is, to your point, you probably know this offense better than I do in some regards, right? So I just think that dynamic, how often does that exist in the NBA? And beyond that, Tony's only come off the bench before the season 47 times in his career. Yeah. So this is new to him. Like, people can talk about, he's a veteran, he's played a smaller role, but being a backup point guard in the NBA, Pete, he's never done that before.
Yeah,
really.
That's what makes this incredibly unique. Again, it's hopefully people grasp what they're witnessing, how unique this is.
It's cool.
I mean, you have veterans come in, and there's some great leaders out there. We've got a number of them on our team, but to have the credibility that Tony has as a player, as a champion, as a member of the Spurs, as someone who knows this offense, as a guy who's played for JB, it's completely different than really almost anything I've ever seen before in the NBA. So it's really cool to be a part of, and I can't wait to see it, just as the season goes on, and how a lot of the guys take what they're learning from Tony and apply it on the court.
And now we have a legit bench mob unit again, right? Which is fun.
That's
my favorite part of the team so far.
And I know we were having some fun talking about nicknames. My biggest problem is I don't like the term bench or reserves or second string. These guys are basically starters in waiting.
Yeah.
And these guys are very good players. They're producing at an incredibly high level, and they've been, I think, the catalysts for our success, because there just isn't a significant drop off with them when they come off the court, when starters come off the court, and that's not been the case the last couple of years. We've struggled, and again, it's not necessarily the players. Some of it may be system related. We get a guy like Tony in here. There's a lot of reasons why, but those guys have been performing at a very, very high level.
So you say no nickname. You don't want a nickname for the...
No, I think we need one. I mean, it's fun. These guys are really getting it done, and I know the fans love to, have nicknames for these guys too. Again, my struggle is I just want something that really illustrates what they're contributing, and I don't think anything that correlates to a bench or second string really illustrates that.
Okay, so what's funny is I came up with the idea of killer bees, and then somebody also brought to me, you got to be careful about that, because like the Houston Astros, and it was Bagwell and Biggio, right? Mm-hmm. And okay, whatever.
That goes all the way back to the Dolphins, I believe. Might have been the first killer bees.
So I kind of like it. I get it. It's maybe as people feel like it's a little too played out, whatever. I think it works because you play into the insect motif, which we love to do, right? One of our marketing themes around here is be here, B-E-E, be here. So I liked killer bees, right? Because they come in, they attack, and B squad. People don't really listen to records anymore, but there used to be B-sides on a record, right? And then Aaron Gradwell, now Aaron Pitzenberger, our social media manager, came up with the idea of, what was it? It was...
bench swarmers.
Bench swarmers, yeah. So I don't like that, because I don't like bench warmers. I'm with you. Like, I feel like there's a negative connotation, but I do like swarm. JB liked the idea of the word swarm. He likes swarming. And then one of our great fans came up with the idea of second sting, which I kind of like that one. Which, to your point, plays to the idea of like, all right, this unit comes in. It's almost like instead of second string, it's second sting, and they come in and they attack. And I feel like the thing with this unit is this whole team. Okay, so maybe we don't have that elite high-level second, third option on the team, but we legitimately go 8 to 10 deep, right? Yeah. So what's the difference between 2 and 10? It's pretty minimal on this team.
And, listen, I'm sure we'll come up with something. We'll turn the marketing minds loose in this place on that. I'm just thrilled with how they're playing. Good. Yeah, I mean, we got a couple of young guys that are contributing on that unit, and it's just this level of confidence when you're playing in a game. Okay, maybe it's not going perfectly according to script, but you've got some things in reserve that you can bring in that maybe could flip it. And so it's just, again, it's been fun. You've got a lot of guys, when you're on the marketing side, that's what you look for, right? These different hooks and these different angles. And, we've always had it with the starters. And, Kemba's a 2-time All-Star, and he's always going to be the leader in that regard. But there's a bunch of other personalities and talent that's emerging on this team, and it's trying to find out what that is. And, we were talking about Malik earlier. The cool part is getting ahead of it. I think all of us last year saw what a dynamic playmaker Malik was. It just wasn't the right situation for him. So we were, obviously promoting him because we knew what kind of talent he had. And then to see it come to life this year, and then you bring in a guy like Miles as a rookie who's doing some of the things that he's doing.
Breaking rims?
Yeah,
like
some of it you couldn't have
backwards.
predicted, but it's fun just to have those things to leverage and get the fans excited about.
Well, and my favorite thing with Miles is I remember bringing this up at our town hall event over the summer with our season ticket holders. I said, hey, like, I've seen Miles. This kid's got bounce, right? Like, I think we got to get him in the dunk contest. And then through preseason, now through the regular season, it's becoming more of a thing. His former college teammate, Jaren Jackson, was talking about it just the other day in Memphis, saying, hey, he's got to be in it because I got to be sitting courtside looking fly, watching my guy. And, and then you get Miles saying, well, I'm more of an in-game dunker. I'm not a dunk contest dunker. All I know is Miles can dunk anything and it looks good.
Yeah, well, that's what makes you a dunk contest dunker, the fact that you're a good in-game dunker.
Yes.
When obviously we knew he had talent. He had unbelievable hops. There's video out there if you want to find it. When he was a high schooler going to Michigan State and basically going up and touching the top of the backboard. But when we had our inter-squad scrimmage earlier in the year and Coach literally stopped the scrimmage just so Miles could put on a dunking exhibition for the fans. Okay, everybody knows at that point. The coach knows, the player knows, the players know. Everyone's aware of what he's capable of. I would be very surprised if he wasn't a participant. Everything goes well into February. Yeah, I mean, he's just explosive. Obviously, the game's here. He's a great kid. He's getting accolades not just in Charlotte, but really from all over the country on his athletic ability. So it'd be a great fit to see him there and be great for the city if he was there.
How cool would it be if, even if he's in the Rising Stars Challenge, which I think is entirely possible, maybe for like a Friday night game, right, for the All-Star Friday night. Then you get to the fact of maybe he's in the dunk contest Saturday. Kemba's, I don't know, second in the NBA in three-pointers made, so I suspect he's got another three-point contest in him here in Charlotte.
We've got potential, to have some significant representation in the
Friday,
All-Star game.
Saturday, and
I
Sunday.
think what I really like about it is it's not because the game's in Charlotte.
Yeah.
It's because we have players who are deserving to be a part of a weekend like that.
All right, let's talk about you for a little bit. So, when you're not just living here at the arena, what are you a fan of? What did you grow up a sports fan of? Because you're from upstate New York.
Yeah, I mean everything. I was a big football fan, huge baseball fan, basketball fan.
Bills fan growing up?
Believe it or not, I grew up a Dolphins fan. I'm not entirely sure how that happened, but for a long time, I was a diehard Dolphins fan. Probably because early '70s they were incredibly successful.
Yeah,
and so you just kind of migrate over to that type of a team. But yeah, I mean, as a kid growing up. Yeah, I was a Dolphins fan.
Did you get beat up in school being a Dolphins fan? What happened?
Nah, I mean, it was a little bit. I was a little bit outside the spectrum of what fans were, and
Who's
where I
this
grew
guy?
up. Yeah, it was the Bills, it was the Giants, it was the Browns, where I was from, and the Bills, when I grew up, weren't very good, so they weren't getting that kind of support they were getting, in the '80s, for instance. So it wasn't that traumatic being a Dolphins fan, but it was fun because they were a successful team, and through the early Super Bowl years and then into the Marino years, there was a lot to be excited about. But overall, I've been more of a fan of players than teams. That's just been how I've been wired. I just appreciate talent. We were talking about the other day, I was having a conversation with some people from the Bucks, and I was a big Sidney Moncrief fan. I wasn't necessarily a Bucks fan, but I just liked the way the guy played the game. So there were players that resonated with me. That's why we'll talk about the 30th anniversary team, because that's what was cool about that, and just would kind of migrate. In baseball, I was a huge Reggie Jackson fan. So it didn't matter where Reggie went, I was going to be a fan of that team because I enjoyed the way he played the game, the way he approached the game, his off-the-field personality, the things that he did to make it more exciting and make it more of a spectacle.
You're ahead of your time, because I think that's how a lot of people consume sports now. Younger kids consume sports now. I think LeBron probably really might have been the guy that took it to another level for obvious reasons. Yeah,
I think he did, and I think working in sports, that's why you try to do both. We're trying to build this brand that creates some affinity, particularly for people in the market. But you also have to focus on your guys and the players, and the players that people want to get behind. But yeah, that was always my angle. Was a huge Pete Maravich fan.
Okay.
Growing up, how could you not be? And again, he was the forefather of some of the things that you're seeing out there on the court today. Talk about being ahead of your time,
shooting from anywhere on the court.
Yeah. So again, it was these type of players that just stuck with me, and I wanted to make sure I consumed as much as I could, which was a lot harder then, of everything that they were doing, because I thought it was just spectacular to watch.
So did you grow up a bigger basketball fan over football, or were you just kind of a general sports fan growing up? Did you ever think like, oh man, I got to be around the NBA, or I got to be around sports?
No, I wasn't. You know what? I was a huge sports fan, and I would say I was locked in to those three major sports, and obviously a hockey fan too, just being from the Northeast. But Probably all three of those sports equally, but I never anticipated really working in sports. That wasn't a long-term plan for me. I don't know that there was as much access then, so it wasn't something you woke up and say, hey, I'm going to be a chief operating officer of a professional sports team. It wasn't really on the radar, so it just kind of happened, and I was in business and migrated over to sports through a series of circumstances, and then was kind of able to grow my career. What
was your first job in sports? Where that was what you're doing every
when
day?
I graduated from college in New York, I started working for a consulting company in Rochester, and we were primarily marketing consulting and worked for some of the bigger companies there, the Kodaks, the Xeroxes of the world. But we started to, through some of the relationships, navigate over to sports. And I remember on behalf of Kodak, I went to the Cotton Bowl. That was really my first, way back when.
Yeah, when it was actually at the Cotton Bowl on the
correct.
On
and
the
that was kind
fairgrounds.
of my first exposure. And then we say, hey, that was pretty cool. I think this is something as a company we should start to look at more closely. And then we started, approaching some professional sports leagues about doing some consulting. We did some work with the NHL. That led to a relationship with the NFL. That led to introduction to some teams. Bills obviously being one of the first because they were right down the street from where we were, an hour away. And through the relationships I developed with the Bills, and it was in a relatively short time, they reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in joining the organization.
Wow.
So 10 years in consulting and then moving over to the NFL. That was a fantastic run up there in Buffalo. I mean, you're working for your hometown team, ostensibly.
Yeah.
It was really cool. And then, got a call from a recruiter after I was with the Bills for about 11 years about an opportunity down here. And that's how I ended up here.
Some team called the Charlotte Hornets. Well, the Charlotte Bobcats.
Charlotte Bobcats at the time, which was a little bit more difficult decision than going to the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah. So when you got that call initially, what was your first thought of okay, this is because that's a big departure.
Yeah, listen, I like the NBA. I was very intrigued by the market. And one of the things from a distance that, I'm following sports in general and teams, and that's part of my job. The one thing I couldn't figure out, and this is before I even considered taking the job, is how can the NBA not work in Charlotte? Mm-hmm. I mean, they crushed it as the Hornets. The market's seen this meteoric rise. To me, it appears to be some sort of sleeping giant. Like, why doesn't it work? And I was thinking about that even prior to getting that call. And then, out of the blue, get a call from a recruiter, and I wasn't even going to come down because you're working for the Bills and the NFL. I mean, the NFL was kind of at the height of its powers at that point in time. It was an amazing place to be, and I'm working for a Hall of Fame owner and Ralph Wilson, and we got an incredible situation there. But just to kind of keep options open, and I had a very supportive management staff in Buffalo. I came down and took a meeting and met with Fred. And after walking around, what I saw was a relatively blank canvas. I mean, certainly the business was nowhere where you wanted it to be, but I thought, I'm pretty confident I could leave it better than I found it, number one. I see a lot of opportunities. It wasn't dissimilar from what we built in Buffalo, relatively small market. The economy was not in a great spot. The product wasn't very good. I mean, these weren't things that concerned me. I've already dealt with those things. So I started thinking more serious about it. But the one hang-up I had, and Fred would tell you this, and I told him this, I said, these teams, these franchises, the success really comes down to who your owner is. And I'm not comfortable with the ownership situation right now. And he said, well, what if I told you we might have a different ownership situation? I said, well, that would depend on who it is. And he said, well, what if I told you it could be Michael Jordan? I said, okay, now that's a game changer.
Wow.
So when you take all the other factors, all the things that I felt this place could be, and you layer on an owner of his stature and even beyond stature, commitment level, which is the real critical piece, I felt like it was a move that at that point in time I needed to make. And, the first few years, candidly, were tough. There's a lot of rebuilding that went on here. That's the thing, to look back and see where we are now. And you wouldn't know unless you were on the inside of the building where we really were then. That's what's incredibly rewarding about seeing everything that's happened and watching some of the success that we're having now.
So let's take people behind the curtain, though, a little bit, because I think sometimes the conversations that are had here are not dissimilar than conversations that are had at a local bar or on your couch with your buddies or wherever, right? And so at that time, we were the Bobcats, and we weren't winning. as much as we would like, right? And, attendance is certainly not where it is now, where we're near, 11,000 season ticket holders?
Yeah, we had 5,000 or less then.
I mean, it's crazy, right? So we're one of the healthiest season ticket holder bases in the NBA now. And you go back to that time, the Hornets thing wasn't even on the radar. Absolutely not even on the radar.
Yep.
And for this to happen took a lot of specific circumstances. Obviously, Shin had to relinquish to the NBA. The NBA then had to try to find another owner. Benson then takes over in New Orleans, who's a New Orleans guy through and through, and he starts to think, man, this Hornets name, what is this doing here? I want something that says New Orleans, right? And that's where the Pelicans came along. So they had to do their thing before we could even think about, okay, do we even want to go and try and reacquire this intellectual property, right? It's really never been done before.
Right.
But at that time, when you first started coming in, I think there was a lot of people who thought, even if it could happen, right? Even in the early days where it started to seem like maybe this is possible, I think a lot of people thought, at the end of the day, if we just won and won consistently, the branding wouldn't matter as much, right? Maybe it's a part of it, but it's not the biggest thing. The biggest thing is winning. And I think both matter, certainly. But I think now time has told us that this identity, this branding, this marketing of being the Charlotte Hornets just resonates on just such a deeper level than I think anybody even realized at the time.
Yeah, I mean, when you go back, it's really not that dissimilar to what JB and Mitch are doing. It was really a complete rebuild, and it was more about process and infrastructure, getting everything right to put us in a position to be successful than anything else. And it was fun being part of that, right? Just kind of rebuilding everything we do and exactly
the way
we
about corporate sponsorships, ticketing, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it was all, I wasn't here, so for whatever reason, it wasn't materializing.
Sure.
But it was a great opportunity to go in on the ground floor and start to rebuild everything. And, I felt like we were making some progress, and the numbers would indicate they were making progress. But, you were heading pretty quickly towards the ceiling unless you had some unbelievable success on the court or something else happened. And the something else turned out to be, and people love to use this word, in this case it's legitimate, something unprecedented happened. A team name has never left the market, been used somewhere else, and then returned, to its hometown. And I think once now it's happened subsequently with the Rams, but it never happened before. So you have this unprecedented opportunity, and it was really about just doing it in a way that, one, you had an obligation to do it right because there's so many people so vested in this community, in that name, but also launching it in a way that it could propel your franchise to the next level. And so, again, incredibly humbling just being part of that, but really proud of everything that we did as an organization to bring the brand back, to roll it out. And now, to be celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Hornets. I mean, these opportunities would not exist if that name didn't come back. What are we celebrating? What are we leveraging? We have no history. We have no we have no former players. We have no equity in the brand. And so you've got all this in front of you, this amazing opportunity. It's really about, again, kind of leveraging in a way that's respectful to the history, that allows us to grow this organization and put us in the position that we're in right now.
I don't know about you. I feel like, especially my job because it is so front-facing, I feel like a spokesman for the team, and I am in a certain regard, but I feel like, especially taking over for Steve, who's been here narrating all 28 years of NBA basketball in the city to this point as we celebrate our 30th anniversary, I feel like I'm a steward of our history, right?
You absolutely.
Do you feel that?
Absolutely.
Of like, hey, I got to manage this the right way because I got to tell our story.
I hope people. It's hard to maybe feel it through the microphone, but I get goosebumps just talking about it. I mean, this means a lot to so many people. And listen, let's go all the way back. We didn't invent anything here. If the Hornets weren't rolled out the right way initially, we would have nothing to build upon. So let's give credit where credit's due. Yep. This was done the right way. And a lot of it goes to the initial group that brought the Hornets to life here in Charlotte, but a lot of it goes to the fans that embraced it at a completely different level, maybe than any other franchise in pro sports. And now we're able, as an organization, to tap into that. And we've got people here like you and many, many others that just have an overwhelming respect for everything that came before us and feel that obligation to continue to do things the right way and bring it to life for our fans on the court. And again, that's why this whole, the 30th anniversary and, letting the fans select an all-time team and the uniforms and the court. I mean, it really is. It's just overwhelming sometimes. I don't sit around and think about it because you get paralyzed.
Yeah.
I just keep moving. But when you stop back and really look at it from a historical perspective, it's just really is amazing. And what I'm probably most pleased about overall, it's just been the response from the fans. I mean, I think you can't go anywhere without them embracing the brand and the logo and thanking you for bringing it back and being a part of doing it in a certain way, and then talking about their memories and their history with the franchise. That's been what's been really cool about it. A lot of the stories and people's memories of this team. And then now take it to a completely different place. The market's changed considerably. You have all these new people coming to town, and it's still the same thing. They all know and they all knew that this Hornets brand belonged in Charlotte, and so they're jumping on board now, and they want to be a part of it as well, and you're creating this critical mass, and it's going to be fun to see where this ride ends up.
And you've got fans that have grown up where maybe they did resonate with the Bobcats here, which is great too. And I think we've done the right thing with this 30th anniversary of recognizing the Bobcats. Why wouldn't we?
Absolutely, they're part of the history, no doubt.
So that's a big
Gerald
part of
Wallace is on the all-time team, and he belongs to be
right. In my opinion, I voted for Emeka. Emeka was a guy, our all-time leading rebounder in team history. I believed he should have been on it. You can make an argument for him. He was a rookie of the year. But I love that too, that we pay respect to the Bobcat years, and that there are also fans. I think we lose sight of this sometimes, where there are people that do resonate with the original. I say we, not as a team, but outsiders. Sometimes there are younger kids who are growing up, and the start of their fandom is Kemba Walker, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
They're a younger generation where maybe they don't. They'll learn about the past, but what they know is now this is where their starting point is in our history.
Well, that's right. There was some debate about where certain players ended up on the list. To me, that's not really relevant. It's, hey, whatever resonates with you. I've told people, and I voted for Bobby Phills because within a certain window, I thought Bobby Phills had the potential to be one of the best players in the history of this franchise. And I was watching him when he was just emerging on the scene, and you could see the incredible talent, and he was just about to explode, and I think continue to carry this franchise and kind of be that next iteration of great Hornets players. And that's the only way I'm ever going to remember that guy. And unfortunately, things ended tragically. But he's going to be on my all-time team for a lot of reasons, and that's how I remember him. And for me, he deserves to be there.
David Wesley is another one for me, because I think David, who is our all-time points leader in playoff history, he spanned the two iterations of Hornets basketball that had the most success and the most sustained success in our team's history, with Glenn and Mason and Dell on those Hornets hardball teams. Then did it again with PJ and Mash and Eldon Campbell and a young Baron Davis and that squad too. So David Wesley, I think sometimes he's a good shooter too. Could do everything. Could facilitate. Could play off the ball. But yeah, there's so many great players in our team's history. And so here's the cool part. November 17th, we're going to have our another classic night. It'll be this is crazy. It'll be a month to the day since our opener, which was a classic night. And Pete, it was surreal. Like for me, that to be my first regular season game as a broadcaster, and to be sitting at my perch at midcourt, and that court to be down, and the crowd to be full, and the organ blasting like it was the 90s again, and the uniforms. We tried to create an immersive experience, and I knew it would look that way with the court down on top of it, but man, did it work. Like you felt like you were our arena looked totally different. It didn't look like our arena on that night.
And the next one, I think, is going to be even better. I think, listen, I hate because they're all going to be great, but I think this could be the best classic night of all, because you get a chance to honor the players that helped build this brand.
The 30th anniversary team will have, 8 of the 10 are going to be there.
That's what we're planning on right now. So an incredible representation, which tells you if you've got 8 of the 10 guys coming, how important that point in their career was and how much Charlotte meant to them. And now it's a chance for us to show them how much they meant to us. And so, I'm incredibly excited. I don't know how many times in your career, Chris, fortunately for you, you're a young guy, you may get to do it again.
So not many is the answer.
How many times can you honor an all-time team?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that many times. For some of us, maybe only once. So, we're trying to really emphasize how important and how special that night's going to be. Obviously we got a great opponent coming in. We just have a ton of other things going on in and around that game. So, we've got this. This is what's kind of unique too, is rarely do you have a promotional window like this where you don't have another home game before this. So I think we're about 10 days out right now. And so we just want to make everybody aware that this is a game that you're going to want to be a part of and you're going to remember for the rest of your life if you're here. Yeah,
and so 8 of the 10, one of the 10 that cannot be there, one of the 2 that will not be there, Al Jefferson, because Al's playing in China. So
correct.
I mean, he just can't make it.
Yeah, right.
It's a bit of a flight.
I know he wanted to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other, unfortunately, is LJ, and I just think there's been. Yeah, I mean, I just think there's been a bit of a disagreement over how to.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that. And with most of these guys, we've been just talking to them directly, and you pick up the phone and you call Kendall Gill, and he says, "I want to be here."
Yeah.
LJ, we've been dealing through his agent, and we just haven't had the same kind of dialogue maybe we've had with the other guys. We're hopeful. There's still a potential that he could show. At this point in time, he's not scheduled, but we're thrilled with the turnout that we have. I mean, you got some Hall of Famers, some all-time greats coming in that have decided to spend that night with the fans of the Charlotte Hornets and remember everything that happened within those windows. That's what's been so exciting about this. When you talk to these guys and you hear the stories, listen, maybe we were around, but we weren't here in the mix like we are now, so we don't know all the things that they went through building this incredible brand and franchise. And now we have a chance to kind of go through all that with them, and now we get to hear it from them in person when they come in here on the 17th.
And they don't get to see each other as much as they would want either. So to get a lot of these guys who played together at the same time back on the court and back in a room together, like for them, they love that opportunity. So like Glenn's going to be there, for example, Glenn Rice, Alonzo. We had Alonzo here a couple years ago as we honored him for one of our classic nights a few seasons ago. Of course, all the other regulars. Dell will be here. He'll have to step down from his broadcasting.
Yeah, we know, and Muggsy's part of the organization now too, and obviously it's pretty unique too having a guy on that shirt, right? One of the all-time greats on the court.
He's still playing, yes.
Playing at the same time and still relatively early in his career. Yes. That's kind of cool as well. So just a lot of fun stuff for us to activate around that. And again, this whole 30th anniversary celebration has been just a really, really cool thing to be a part of for everybody in the organization.
Hornets30.com. And here's the other cool part. We're taping this on a Thursday, so this is out now. People can go check it out. I'm going to give a shout-out to our Hornets digital team.
Yeah.
Specifically, Kyle Kiebert and James Eaglebauer, who are doing fantastic work with these features. And, okay, we can let people behind the curtain again, I think. So we knew initially, months and months and months ago, hey, we're going to work on this, right? We're lining up interviews, a who's who, anybody and everybody that knows how to tell the story of Hornets basketball and Bobcats basketball too. And frankly, we've gotten basically everybody we've wanted to talk to in some way, shape, or form. And if we didn't do it directly, somebody else did the interview remotely for us, right? And got us that footage. And we went to various outlets and tried to pitch it to them. And for whatever reason, I think they made a terrible decision. They said, "Yeah, we just don't want to turn this into a documentary." And so he said, "That's fine. We'll do it on our own." And we are, and we're launching these every Thursday. And the first one is on opening night on November 4th, 1988, which was 30 years ago this past Sunday against the Cleveland Cavaliers. We lost by 40. Got a standing ovation from our crowd, which told you how special it was going to be.
Yeah.
But these launch every Thursday, and it's so compelling. It's so dynamic. It's incredible work. And I'm just going to wag my finger at everybody that said they don't want to turn this into something.
Yeah, I mean, for our creative digital marketing team, I think have killed it, and they've done an incredible job. But initially talking about the founding of this franchise in that first episode, and now the second one about the opening night.
Yep.
There's interviews, there's historical footage, there's behind-the-scenes access, there's things that maybe you remember, there's things that maybe you never knew. And again, if you weren't from here, I think it's required watching so you have the historical perspective you need on the franchise that's in your city. So that's been great. I watched the first one the other day. It was very cool. I can't wait to see the second one kind of come out and just watch it like everybody else. Yep. And then eventually, if you string them all together, it is a documentary and the history of the Hornets, and people will be able to kind of catalog that and have it forever.
So it's like basketball love stories airing now. It's this, which I think totals almost 20 hours of documentary that they put together. They air vignettes every week on ESPN. That's essentially what we're doing, and they're all. I mean, I made a list, Pete, going back last summer, of all the different things that I thought were storylines and topics and things that just stood out to me in the history of basketball in the city. And I came up with 30 of them just by myself, which tells you there were things I probably didn't even remember or forgot or overlooked. But it's just amazing. To your point, you forget some of the things that happened over the course of 30 years in this town.
That's probably one of the aspects I've enjoyed the most, is that the vast majority of what we've done has been fan-sourced. Mm-hmm. And so, you made a list. I mean, I made my list by just inquiring on Twitter what people remember about the team, and it just flows in.
Stand out, right?
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
It's just random stuff that people remember.
Yeah, it is, and then you got to determine how you want to incorporate it. But I mean, literally everything that we've done, and this just starts with the initial return of the brand, has been fan sourced. So that I think we're proud of what we've done, but the fans should be incredibly proud of what they've done, because they've contributed at a very high level to everything that we've done to get us to this point.
Okay, if you had to pick one uniform, teal or white, of the classics, which one do you like so far? We've rolled out 2 each of the last 2 years, because I thought I liked the teal more. I did. And now I've seen the white, and they're classic.
Yeah, well, you might have another choice coming up in the near future. But, I love them both.
Yeah.
I would lean towards white just because that was the original.
Yep.
And, that's what I remember. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to roll it out for the 30th anniversary on the Classic Court. Mm-hmm. Just made the most sense for us. But I would say the white probably with me sticks the most. I just think they all look great. Yeah, I mean, our guys have done an incredible job on the jerseys, and the great part about this, again, we're just scratching the surface of what we can do with this brand.
And now this is the last thing we'll wrap up with this. So it's going to be a big 3 days, and we'll have 2 games in 3 days. The 17th, we'll play the Sixers. The 19th, we'll play the Celtics here, and we'll have our first Buzz City night. And we unveiled our city uniforms just about a week ago, and there's something about black and teal just together. Yeah. No other colors mixed in, no white, no purple. Nothing. Black and teal. And this is the second year in a row we've done this, and those things look pretty sharp.
Yeah, this goes back to what we were talking about, because we have so much kind of in our arsenal, right? And you talk about the classic nights and the Buzz City and all the history at our disposal. Mm-hmm. And again, to think back to how little we had at our disposal back in the Bobcats years, and that's no disrespect. That's just what it was. We had to be even more creative. Now it's kind of creatively leveraging the equity as opposed to really just creating the equity. So it's a completely different play than it was before. But it's great to be able to roll these things out. And I think we knew from the day we brought it back that we needed black in our color palette. Mm-hmm. It's just stylistically, it's where you want to go as a brand. And we've every time we've rolled it out, there's been another tweak, another iteration, and there's a lot of kind of discoverable pieces of that jersey and uniform that people are kind of connecting with now, but we're going to continue to do it. We want to be fresh. We want to be new. There's going to be a lot of changes over the next couple of years, relative to where we go with our uniforms, and I think the fans are going to enjoy it. We're just always going to try to keep things new and exciting for our fans moving forward, because they deserve it.
I like some of the design cues, like you're talking about the flaps on the shorts. You fold them up, and there's a CHA word mark.
The wings on the waistband.
Yes, little pin striping that pays an homage to our asymmetrical striping down our normal uniforms. So it's really cool. To your point, discoverable. You'll get these if you buy them, and it'll be our fan shop, I think, on the 19th.
We're expecting to have everything in, and not only that, there's a ton of kind of accessory pieces that go with the Buzz City jersey. So if the jersey's not something you want to grab, T-shirts and hats and all kinds of different apparel.
And we branded it, I think our motif is City of Flight. Mm-hmm. And I actually think it's very fitting, because I remember when we got the Bobcats, at that time it was just a team. They did a naming contest, and this is ironic, okay? Yeah. So I guess it would have been 87 or 88 before the team was originally playing. They did a naming contest, and Spirit won the naming contest. the Charlotte Spirit.
Yep.
Which you look back on that, you think, no, that's a terrible idea, right? So they ended up naming the team the Hornets instead. They went against fan wishes. No, excuse me. Shin was going to name them the Spirit, and the fans wanted Hornets, and that's what they went with. Well, guess what? The second time around, the fans wanted Flight.
Yeah.
It would have been the Charlotte Flight, and Bob Johnson named them instead the Bobcats. So it's kind of flipped both times. But I always liked Charlotte Flight. I remember voting for that. I thought there's something to the name of
there's a lot
Flight.
there's a lot you can do with it. And again, that's as we start looking forward.
Yeah.
I think there's some opportunities for us to capitalize on that. But again, this makes this whole thing so interesting because there's been a lot of name changes, in professional sports. But I don't honestly think any of them have been as successful as ours, and there's a reason for it. We didn't simply change the name.
Yep.
We brought back history, reclaimed history that most people, even though there are people that wanted it, most people probably never thought was possible. And again, that's what's really changed the whole dynamic.
Any critiques on my job performance 11 games in before you go?
Chris, you're doing a great job.
Okay.
You
don't have to say that just because you're like 10 feet away from me.
Listen, you're replacing a legend, so you're coming into a very difficult situation. I think you're handling it well. I love the passion that you're approaching the job with. I mean, I had the conversation the other day with some of our digital team members. There's certain people that live the brand and live the product, and that's what we want. I mean, I tell people all the time, I get the questions about, hey, I want to get into sports. Here's what I want to do. I said, first and foremost, you need to be an expert in a discipline. We don't hire generalists. Nobody hires generalists in sports. They don't exist. You're a broadcaster, right? That's your specialty. That's your discipline. Now you cover that with the passion that you're approaching your job with. That's what makes a difference. So it doesn't matter if you're in broadcasting or marketing or sales or PR, community, finance. It could be any of those things. You have to be an expert in those disciplines first, and then apply the passion that you have for the job. And that's what I think ends up making a great teammate. What's
funny though is, so the other night I get off the air and I come down here and I walk in the studio. It's like I saw a ghost. Steve was sitting in your chair where you're at right now because he had to record something, and I thought, I'm getting the hook already. All I did was 11 games. I'm getting the hook already.
Listen, my friend. Let's just be clear. When Steve comes back for his night, you will be taking a back seat to the legend, to the GOAT.
I don't want to make him go to work, but I do want to kind of. Can we call the game? We have a 3-man booth and have him call the game with me, or I step away for a quarter.
I know you feel the same way. That whenever Steve comes back, there's a chair with his name on it. So
sure.
That's going to be fun too. Again, having a guy who was just here last year, who's just so connected to the franchise, to be able to bring him back. And now, we honored him last year, but he needs to be honored at a completely different level. And that's going to take place between making that night his and some things I don't want to reveal yet that we're going to be doing. And a lot of people have already seen, the bobblehead that we're going to be rolling out, which is really cool. So it's going to be fun to bring him back. But you're following a legend, and and that's something that never goes away. You're always going to be following a legend.
Well, Pete, it's our Jordan episode of Courtside Seats, and quite intentionally, that's why we brought you in. So thanks for dropping by.
No, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks.
That's another episode of Courtside Seats, our Charlotte Hornets podcast. We appreciate Pete Guelli, our Chief Operating Officer, for dropping by with us on our Jordan episode of Courtside Seats, episode 23. If you've missed any of the previous 22, you can check them out wherever podcasts are available. That includes Apple Podcasts, so just search Courtside Seats. You can search my name, Kroeger, Kroeger, and you can find us, subscribe, rate, and review if you don't mind. Spread the word, and that way we can get our podcast featured and get more people checking out what we're doing each and every week. You can also find us on YouTube, our official Charlotte Hornets YouTube channel. Also great content being posted there all the time throughout the week. And of course, always at Hornets.com and the Hornets app. We'll catch you guys back here again next week, another edition of Courtside Seats.